Okay, camera 1 is rolling, camera 2 is rolling, and camera 3 is rolling. How many cameras does one man need? Well, there's 2 more here. Right, let's crack on. It is day 16 or 17 of lockdown here in the UK. It's a little bit like Christmas, so I'm not really sure what day of the week it is, where we are. But yeah, we've been in lockdown now for over 2 weeks. And what I'd do today is I would share some of the images that I've taken during lockdown and talk a little bit about how being in lockdown has actually changed my photography. So I should explain a little bit about what lockdown means for those of us in the UK, for people that are not here. So essentially the government guidelines are that we should only go out of the house, we should only leave the house for a couple of reasons. Firstly, for work, if we cannot work from home, and if we work in an essential service. So that'd be something like working within healthcare or within the food chain, the food supply chain, which I don't. The other reasons are to go out for essential supplies, so those include food and medicine. And the third reason is for exercise. And so I've been taking my camera out and doing some photography while I've been out exercising. Now, I should just say that I've been using this. This is my Canon M50. It's the camera that I would normally use to film these videos. And this is the camera that I've been taking along with me. A little mirrorless camera. I haven't been taking my normal big DSLR, my Canon 60, the camera that I would normally use for landscape photography. Haven't been taking my tripod, haven't been using filters. I don't feel that that's really in the spirit of lockdown. So I've been using this little camera shooting handheld. And the images that I'm going to show you today are the images that I've been capturing while I've been out walking. Now, I should just explain a little bit about where I live. I live in a village called Shap, which is on the far eastern edge of the Lake District National Park. It's not actually in the national park itself. And I've got a little walk, a little route that I take quite regularly that takes me right up to the edge of the national park. Despite the fact that we're not in the national park, the surrounding countryside is really quite beautiful. It's not as dramatic as the Lake District, obviously, but it's lots of kind of open countryside, and there's some interesting geographical features with lots of limestone. And I take it for granted, I'll be honest with you. And so this has been really nice for me to actually spend a little bit of time photographing the area in which I live. So like I say, I've been going out on my daily walk, and this is the first image I want to talk about. Now, I live very close to the Haweswater Reservoir, and that's to the north, and then to the south we have the Wet Sleddle Reservoir, which is much, much smaller. And the two are linked by a series of underground waterworks. And the two reservoirs are maintained by United Utilities, and the United Utilities have a service road, what we locally refer to as the concrete road, that link the two together. And it's actually the boundary in places of the Lake District National Park. And so this is the first shot I wanted to show you, and this is a shot of that concrete road. So on the left hand side we have not the Lake District, and on the right hand side we have the Lake District. What I like about this shot is it's a beautiful sweeping S-curve. And I should say I've been shooting exclusively in black and white. I haven't been going out in the mornings or the evenings for sunrise and sunset as I would normally. I've been shooting in the morning and in the afternoon, still avoiding midday. And also, I find that black and white is a lot more forgiving when I'm shooting in less than ideal light conditions. So yeah, this project is exclusively in black and white. And what I like about this camera, because it's mirrorless, I really struggle to see in black and white. So what I can do with this is I can switch it to monochrome, and then when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I can actually see what the shot looks like in black and white. And that's really helped me. Now, if I see a shot that has a bit of colour contrast, some greens and against some oranges or something like that, to my eye that's tuned to see colour, I see a bit of contrast there. But pop my camera up and looking through that, and because they're sort of similar brightnesses, it just looks a big mass of grey. So that's a shot that's not working in black and white. So this really helps me to see. And this is a nice example of that. You've got some nice contrast here. You've got the bright road, and then on the either side you've got the darker grasses. Black and white also helps me to bring out some of the finer details and some of the textures and patterns. Particularly in this case, in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got those grasses and you've got some nice texture there. Now, but the other thing I like about this shot is there's a little bit of context to it. So in the top left-hand corner is the Shap Limestone Works, owned by Tata Steel. Shap is limestone country. And so they quarry the limestone locally, and then it goes there and it's processed, and the output of that is then used in the production of steel. And so that gives us a little bit of context, and actually, you can see a little bit of Shap in the image. But this is a road that I walk along. I must have been up here a couple hundred times, something like that. Never ever really stopped to photograph it. But beautiful S curve, and a bit further on, we've got this thingy, and I don't know what this is. I've got no idea. I'm assuming it's something to do with the underground waterworks that are joining the two reservoirs together. I've got no idea. But because my photography has been limited, all of a sudden, things that I would never have paid any attention to before, not even given a second look to, become fascinating photographic subjects. And what I like about this shot is that this produces quite an interesting foreground, but in the background you can actually see Shap, the village in which I live, and you can get a real good feel for what the landscape is around the area where I live. Next up, okay, so this is Hardendale Nab. So Shap sits on the line of the communications that run from south to north, from England to Scotland. So communications, what I mean there, we have the main A6, which used to be the old main north to south road. We have the newer M6 motorway. We have the train line that runs from London to Glasgow. And we have a lot of utilities. So, for example, right outside our front door runs two fibre optic cables. We've got the BT fibre optic cable and we've got the Sky fibre optic cable. So if I cross over all of that over the motorway, and I don't really like doing it because I've got quite bad vertigo. I don't like going over those motorway bridges. But if you go over there, come to a small hamlet called Hardendale. And it's an area that I have explored before, and it's an area I have photographed before. But I did go up there very early on, and I will say it is very early on. Since I went up there, the government guidelines have changed a little bit. So I did spend a little bit of time sort of walking around and exploring. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going and exploring. I'm going out for my exercise and then I'm coming back again. So I'm not dawdling around. But I did go up there, did have a little look around at this limestone. Never explored this before. And on the other side, this shot in itself is not particularly interesting, but on the other side of this is a really quite impressive escarpment that I didn't know anything about, didn't even know it existed. It's east facing, so I think it'll be really good at sunrise. You get a bit of light on it. So that's something that I will go out and photograph tomorrow. I might take my walk up there tomorrow, photograph it quickly, and then come back again, not dawdling. So I might do that tomorrow. But yeah, it's kind of allowing me the opportunity to explore a few little areas that perhaps I've overlooked in the past. Now this is another shot taken up on Hardendale now. We've got these 5 cairns made up of limestone. And this is the view west looking back towards the Lake District. So these layered hills are the Eastern Fells. And this was taken in the evening. So the sun was off to the west. And I wouldn't normally shoot into the light. As a colour photographer, I don't like what it does to the way the colours. You get far too much contrast in it. And the colours just, I think they look terrible. And so I wouldn't normally do that in colour, but because I've been shooting in black and white, that means that I have been able to. And I really like this shot. So I've been split toning my images. So this is a really personal project. It's not really meant for anybody else other than myself, and for just recording what lockdown has been like for me and what I've been photographing and how I've been limiting my photography to my local area. So this isn't really meant for anybody else, and I know that the kind of split toning, some people like it, some people don't. But I have been. So I've been warming my highlights and I've been cooling my shadows, even though I'm shooting in black and white. So this is a nice little scene. So next up, so because I have been shooting with this, it means that I'm much more kind of able to react to different scenes as I see them. Now, if I've been shooting with my normal camera, what will happen is I would go to a location and then I'd put my tripod up and then I'd put my camera on and then I'd compose my image and I'd focus, maybe put some filters on, and that is not conducive to grabbing a quick shot. Now, as I was walking along, I spotted this scene, and I really like this photo, I really like this shot. We've got this sheep on this hill and it was looking at me. So I've got direct eye contact and the sheep is silhouetted against the sky, and then on the right hand side you've got the tree obviously, which kind of balances everything out. And I really like this shot, but this isn't a shot that I would have been able to get if I'd been shooting in the old way. I had my camera ready, I saw the image, up, shot, bang. And like I say, I really like this image, I'm really happy with it. Next up, okay. So this is quite a personal image. This was taken on the day when I was probably at my lowest. Lockdown is difficult for all of us, but I would think it's particularly difficult for those of us who make our living outdoors. And since I went full time, photography has not been a pastime; it's become a way of life. And that lifestyle means I've been out a lot more, and I found it quite hard to be indoors all the time. And this image was taken on my lowest day, and it kind of reflects my mood at the time. In my photography, normally I like to shoot things that are quite optimistic, beautiful scenes, and I don't really put an awful lot of myself or my own emotion into my images. And this is an image that is full of it. So it's quite a sad scene. There's a tree that's obviously been blown over. We get quite strong westerly winds here. It's obviously been blown over. It's split in half, and in that respect, I think it's quite sad. And it really did reflect my mood at the time. And this is probably one of the only images that I own that really reflects how I was feeling at a particular moment in time. And that's a strange thing for me. And I'll be honest with you, as far as my normal photography goes, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if I'm the sort of photographer who people are interested in my own emotions and feelings. I think really what my photography is about the beauty of the Lake District. And my interpretation of that is obviously important, but how I'm feeling, probably less so. Okay, now this is the next image. This was taken on a day where we just did a very short walk. End of the day, it was really cold, and I walked down a route that I very, very rarely take. I haven't been down there for 2 or 3 years, and I saw this scene. Very simple, just got the tree and the wall. Probably, not brilliant photographically. I think the wall probably draws the eye out of the frame, so it's not ideal. But it creates, the wall and the tree create a natural frame, a frame within a frame of the distant fells. And this kind of caught my eye. And this sort of image is the sort of thing that I would like to take more of in the Lake District. It has a much more intimate feel. It's not so much about a grand vista, but about a small portion, a small, more intimate scene. So this is something that I would have walked past before, and probably would have walked past 2 weeks ago. But now I've been focusing a little bit more on more intimate details and more intimate shots. This just jumped out at me. And I think perhaps this might be an example of how I have matured as a photographer in the last couple of weeks, and how perhaps lockdown is helping me to become a bit more of a better photographer. Certainly changing my approach. Next image. This was taken at Shap Abbey, which is just down the road from me. I could spend hours exploring this place and looking at all sorts of different compositions here, but that's not in the spirit of lockdown. So we went out, Helen was with me, we wandered down there, and I went straight to the composition that I know, and I took that and I went home, and that was that. Now this shot doesn't offer me any challenges, it's nothing new, but there's still something quite comforting as a photographer being able to go out and photograph something that's familiar, we're not necessarily testing ourselves or pushing ourselves or to learn anything new, but do we have to every time we take a photograph? Is working a scene that we know, and there's some comfort in that. And this is an important image for me in the last couple of weeks, because I think it brought me great feeling of comfort and a great feeling of familiarity, which at the time, when you're living in extraordinary times, is important to us. So yeah, nothing particularly complicated about it. Is this the final image? This is the final image. Okay. So I have been doing a little bit of client work. I have been doing Skype calls and working with photographers, predominantly in the US actually, trying to help them with their photography and different aspects of photography. And one of the guys I've been working with, John, lovely fella, he was out photographing a lime kiln very near where he lives in the US. And it was part of a project that we'd set him. And I wanted to show him one of the lime kilns near us. As I said, we live in limestone country, and I wanted to show him what we've got near us. So again, I took a walk out, took a couple of shots, 4 or 5 actually, but I essentially came up one side and then walked down the other, and then I went home and didn't linger. So this is something that I've always wanted to photograph. I drive past it quite a lot, and I've never taken the time to do it. And so again, this is another way in which lockdown has been kind of helping me to explore different things and ultimately to become a bit of a better photographer. So that's the end of it. That's the end of my sort of impromptu slideshow. I guess the conclusion that I come to is, that lockdown has actually been, I think, extraordinarily good for me as a photographer. And I've already started to see profound changes in the way that I go about my photography and the way that I select images, how I'm shooting. And I think that is going to impact my photography once this is all over. Now, how it's going to impact it, I'm not quite sure. But I do feel that when I get back out into the Lake District and we get back to normal, that things are actually going to be a bit different.